Get this thief out of my house." Victoria Thornton's voice cut through the mansion like a blade. She grabbed Maya's arm, her manicured nails digging into flesh. "You think you can steal from my dead nephew and get away with it?" Maya's tears meant nothing. Her pleas meant nothing. Victoria shoved her toward the door, while Brandon Thornton watched with a satisfied smirk, twirling Alexander's gold pen between his fingers, the same pen he had planted in Maya's room just hours ago. What none of them knew was that Alexander Thornton was not dead. He was watching everything from a hospital bed miles away, his jaw clenched with fury, as he witnessed the only person who had ever truly loved him being thrown into the rain like garbage. Before we continue this incredible story, please subscribe to our channel and follow Maya's journey to the very end. Comment below which city you're watching from, so I can see how far this story has traveled around the world. The phone call came at 10:47 in the morning, and Victoria Thornton would remember that exact moment for the rest of her life. She was standing in the library of the Thornton estate in Greenwich, Connecticut, reviewing documents with her lawyer when her cell phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen. Unknown number. She almost ignored it. "Mrs. Thornton." The voice on the other end belonged to a state trooper. "I'm calling about Alexander Thornton." Victoria's hand tightened around the phone. "What about him?" "There's been an accident, ma'am. A serious one. His vehicle exploded on the highway near the construction site in Newark. I'm afraid—" The trooper kept talking, but Victoria had stopped listening. Her mind was already racing ahead, calculating, planning, adjusting. Her face arranged itself into an expression of shock, but inside, something entirely different was happening. "Oh my God," she whispered, making sure her voice trembled appropriately. "Oh my God, no." The lawyer looked up alarmed. "Victoria, what is it?" She lowered the phone slowly, her hand shaking just enough to be convincing. "Alexander, they say he's dead." Across the house in the servants' quarters, Maya Thompson was folding laundry when she heard the scream. It wasn't a normal sound. It was raw and terrible, echoing through the mansion's corridors like something breaking. Maya dropped the shirt she was holding and ran. By the time she reached the main hallway, the house was already in chaos. Staff members clustered in doorways whispering. Someone was crying. The head housekeeper, Mrs. Chen, stood frozen by the staircase, her face pale as paper. "What happened?" Maya asked, her heart pounding. Mrs. Chen couldn't speak. She just shook her head and pointed toward the library. Maya moved closer, careful to stay invisible, the way she had learned to do in the 3 years she had worked in this house. She pressed herself against the wall near the library door, listening. "Confirmed through personal effects," a man's voice was saying. "The vehicle was completely engulfed. I'm sorry, Mrs. Thornton." "My nephew—" Victoria's voice came out broken, devastated. "My poor Alexander." Maya's legs gave out beneath her. She grabbed the door frame to keep from falling, her vision blurring. Alexander Thornton, dead. The words didn't make sense. They couldn't make sense. She had seen him just last night. He had passed her in the hallway on his way to his study, and he had nodded at her the way he always did. A small acknowledgement. A recognition that she existed. No one else in this house had ever given her that. "Maya?" Mrs. Chen's voice seemed to come from very far away. "Maya, are you all right?" She wasn't all right. She would never be all right again. But she couldn't say that. She couldn't explain that the billionaire everyone else saw as distant and cold had been the only person in 3 years who had ever asked her name. She couldn't explain that his small kindnesses had meant more to her than anyone would ever understand. "I'm fine," she managed. "I just need a moment." She walked away on legs that felt like water, found an empty storage closet, stepped inside, and let herself cry. 3 hours later, the mansion had transformed into a stage set for grief. Flowers arrived by the truckload. Catering companies called with condolence packages. The phone rang constantly with business associates, politicians, and socialites expressing their sympathies. News vans lined up outside the gates. Reporters shouted questions at anyone who entered or left. Through it all, Victoria Thornton performed magnificently. "He was like a son to me," she told a group of executives who had rushed over from Manhattan. Her eyes glistened with tears. "I don't know how I'll go on without him." Brandon Thornton stood beside her, his hand on her shoulder, nodding solemnly. "Uncle Alex was a visionary. This is a loss for the entire country." Maya watched from the kitchen doorway as she prepared refreshments for the endless stream of visitors. She watched Victoria accept embrace after embrace, heard her say the same grief-stricken words over and over again. Something didn't feel right. She had worked in this house for 3 years. She had seen Victoria Thornton angry, impatient, dismissive, and cruel. She had never seen her sad. Not once. Not when her husband died 5 years ago. Not when her sister passed away last spring. Victoria didn't do sad. Victoria did calculated. But Maya pushed the thought away. She was being unfair. People grieved in different ways. Just because Victoria had never been kind to her didn't mean the woman wasn't capable of genuine emotion. Still, the feeling lingered. That evening, after the visitors had finally left and the house had grown quiet, Maya found herself standing outside Alexander's study. She shouldn't go in. She knew that. The room was probably off limits now. But her feet carried her forward anyway, and before she could stop herself, she was turning the handle. The study smelled like him. Leather and old books, and something else, something subtle that she couldn't name but would recognize anywhere. His desk sat exactly as he had left it. Papers arranged in neat stacks, a half-empty coffee cup beside his computer. Maya's eyes burned. She moved around the room slowly, not touching anything, just looking. The photographs on the shelves, the awards on the walls, the small personal items that revealed who he had been behind the public image. There was a picture she had never noticed before tucked away in a corner. A young Alexander, maybe 20 years old, standing beside an older woman who had his same eyes. His mother, Maya, realized she had died when Alexander was 22. Maya remembered reading about it somewhere. "He lost everyone," she whispered to the empty room. "And no one even knew him. What are you doing in here?" Maya spun around, her heart slamming against her ribs. Brandon Thornton stood in the doorway, his arms crossed, his expression cold. I was just... Maya's voice failed her. Brandon stepped into the room, his eyes scanning her up and down in a way that made her skin crawl. "You were just stealing something, looking for valuables." "No, I would never." "Then what are you doing in my uncle's private study in the middle of the night?" Maya's cheeks burned with shame and anger. "I came to pay my respects. Mr. Thornton was kind to me." Brandon laughed. It was an ugly sound. "Kind to you, Alexander wasn't kind to anyone. He was cold, distant, and obsessed with work. You're a maid. He probably didn't even know your name." The words hit Maya like a slap. "He did know my name," she said quietly. "He asked me once. He was the only person in this house who ever did." Something flickered across Brandon's face. Surprise, maybe, or suspicion. "Get out," he said flatly. "And don't let me catch you in here again." Maya left, her head held high despite the tears threatening to spill down her cheeks. She didn't see Brandon watching her go. His eyes narrowed, his mind already working. The next morning, Victoria summoned the staff to the main hall. She stood at the top of the grand staircase, dressed in elegant black, looking every inch the grieving matriarch. Brandon stood beside her, his expression appropriately solemn. "As you all know," Victoria began, her voice carrying the perfect mix of sorrow and authority, "my nephew Alexander has passed away. This is a devastating loss for our family and for this household." Maya stood at the back of the assembled staff, her eyes fixed on the floor. "Until the estate is settled," Victoria continued, "there will be changes. Expenses will be monitored closely. Staff hours will be reduced. Some positions may be eliminated entirely." A murmur rippled through the group. I expect everyone to continue their duties with professionalism and discretion. Anyone who speaks to the press will be terminated immediately. Anyone caught stealing or engaging in inappropriate behavior will face legal consequences." Her eyes swept over the assembled servants, and for just a moment they landed on Maya. Maya felt the weight of that gaze like a physical pressure. There was something in Victoria's eyes that she couldn't quite identify. Something calculating. Something dangerous. "That is all," Victoria said. "Return to your work." The staff dispersed, whispering among themselves. Maya tried to slip away unnoticed, but a hand caught her arm. "Maya Thompson." She turned to find Victoria standing directly behind her. Up close, Maya could see that the woman's eyes were completely dry. The grief she had displayed for the visitors was nowhere to be seen. "Yes, ma'am? I understand you were in Alexander's study last night." Maya's blood ran cold. Yes, ma'am. I apologize. I shouldn't have." "No," Victoria said softly. "You shouldn't have." She leaned closer, her voice dropping to barely above a whisper. "My nephew may have tolerated your presence, but I am not my nephew. Remember your place, girl. You are a servant. Nothing more." She released Maya's arm and walked away, leaving Maya standing alone in the hallway, trembling. 2 days later, the funeral took place under gray skies. The ceremony was massive. Hundreds of people gathered at the cemetery, politicians and business leaders and celebrities, all dressed in black, all wearing expressions of appropriate sorrow. News cameras captured every moment. Speeches were given. Tears were shed. Maya watched from the back of the crowd, invisible among the other servants, who had been brought along to assist with the reception afterward. She couldn't take her eyes off the casket. It was closed, of course. The explosion had been too severe for an open viewing. That was what they said. But something about it felt wrong to Maya. Something about this whole day felt wrong. Victoria stood at the front, supported by Brandon, accepting condolences with graceful dignity. She dabbed at her eyes with a handkerchief. She thanked each person who approached with just the right words. She was perfect. Too perfect. Maya shook her head, trying to clear it. She was being paranoid. Grief was making her see conspiracies where there were none. Victoria Thornton might be cold and cruel, but she wasn't. She couldn't be. Beautiful service, wasn't it? Maya turned to find Marcus Williams, the head of security, standing beside her. He was a large man, former military, with kind eyes that seemed out of place on his intimidating frame. "Yes, sir," Maya said quietly. Marcus was silent for a moment, watching the crowd. Then, so softly that Maya almost missed it, he said, "He would have hated this." Maya looked at him sharply. "All this spectacle." Marcus continued, his eyes fixed straight ahead. "All these people who never really knew him. He would have wanted something quiet, private." Maya's throat tightened. "You knew him well." "I've worked for him for 15 years, watched him build everything from nothing." Marcus's jaw tightened. He was a good man, better than most people realized. Something in his voice made Maya brave. "Mr. Williams, do you think... is there anything strange about..." She couldn't finish the sentence. It sounded crazy, even in her own head. But Marcus looked at her. Really looked at her. And something passed between them. An understanding. "Be careful, Maya," he said quietly. "And if you ever need help, you come find me. Understand?" Before she could respond, he walked away, disappearing into the crowd. That night, Maya couldn't sleep. She lay in her narrow bed in the servants' quarters, staring at the ceiling, replaying the day over and over in her mind. The funeral. Victoria's performance. Marcus's strange warning. Be careful. What did he mean? Careful of what? Of whom? The questions circled in her brain until she thought she would go mad. Finally, at 2 a.m., she gave up on sleep and got out of bed. She needed air. She needed to think. She needed to say goodbye. The thought came from nowhere, but once it arrived, she couldn't shake it. She hadn't been able to get close to the grave at the funeral. There had been too many people, too many cameras. But now, in the quiet of night, maybe she could finally... She got dressed quickly, pulling on jeans and a sweatshirt. She slipped out of the servants' entrance and walked through the dark grounds to the garage where her old Honda was parked. The drive to the cemetery took 20 minutes. The gates were closed, but Maya knew there was a gap in the fence on the east side, a spot where groundskeepers sometimes slipped through. She parked on a side street and walked the rest of the way, her heart pounding with every step. What was she doing? This was crazy. If anyone caught her... But she kept walking. The cemetery was different at night. Quieter. More real somehow, without the crowds and cameras and pretense. Maya made her way through the rows of headstones, guided by moonlight, until she found it. Alexander Thornton III. Beloved son. Leader. Legacy. Maya stood there for a long moment, just looking at the words carved in stone. Then her knees buckled, and she fell to the ground. "I don't know why I'm here," she whispered to the grave. "I don't know why this hurts so much. You barely knew me." The night was silent around her. No answer came. "But you saw me," she continued, her voice breaking. "When everyone else looked right through me, you saw me. You asked my name. You defended me when they blamed me for that broken vase." Tears spilled down her cheeks, soaking into the fresh earth. "I was invisible my whole life. In Georgia, growing up poor. Here, working as a maid. I learned how to disappear, how to exist without taking up space, how to survive by not being seen." She pressed her palm against the cold ground. "But you saw me, Mr. Thornton, and for one moment, I felt like I mattered." A sob tore from her throat. "I prayed for you every night. Did you know that I prayed that God would protect you from the people around you, the people who only wanted your money, your power, your name?" She looked up at the headstone, her vision blurred. "I should have prayed harder." The tears came faster now, impossible to stop. "I loved you," she whispered, the confession spilling out before she could stop it. "I know it's crazy. I know a maid isn't supposed to love a billionaire. I know you probably never thought about me at all. But I couldn't help it." Her voice dropped even lower. "You were kind when you didn't have to be. You were human when everyone else expected you to be a machine. And that kindness, it meant everything to me." She bent forward until her forehead touched the earth. "I'm sorry I never told you. I'm sorry I was too afraid. I'm sorry." She couldn't finish. The sobs took over, shaking her entire body. She didn't know how long she stayed there, crying into the dirt. Minutes, hours. Time lost all meaning. There was only grief, endless and overwhelming. She didn't notice the car that pulled up outside the cemetery gates. She didn't notice the figure that emerged holding an umbrella against the light drizzle that had begun to fall. She didn't notice the man watching her from the shadows, his face half hidden, his eyes fixed on her with an intensity that would have frightened her if she had seen it. Alexander Thornton stood in the darkness, listening to every word. He wasn't dead. He had never been dead. The explosion had been staged, the death faked, all part of an elaborate plan to expose those who would betray him the moment they believed him gone. He had expected to catch Victoria in her schemes. He had expected to see Brandon's true colors emerge. He had expected business partners to reveal hidden agendas and supposed friends to show their greed. What he had not expected was this. A maid kneeling in the rain at his empty grave, confessing love so raw and honest that it took his breath away. Alexander had been watching the security feeds for days. He had seen Victoria and Brandon begin their maneuvering within hours of his death. He had seen colleagues and investors jockeying for position, eager to carve up his empire. But he had also seen Maya. He had seen her crying alone in the storage closet after learning of his death. He had seen her standing outside his study, hesitating, then entering with a reverence that made his chest ache. He had seen Brandon confront her and the quiet dignity with which she had defended herself. And now this. "I loved you because you were human, when you didn't have to be." The words echoed in his mind, piercing through defenses he had built over a lifetime. No one had ever loved him for that. No one had ever even seen that. Except her. Alexander took a step forward, then stopped himself. If he revealed himself now, everything would be ruined. The plan, the investigation, the chance to finally expose the rot at the heart of his own family. But watching her cry alone in the dark? "Sir." The voice came from beside him. Dr. James Mitchell, his personal physician, and one of the only people who knew the truth. "We need to go. It's not safe for you to be here." Alexander didn't move. "She's been accused of stealing," he said quietly. "Victoria planted evidence. They're going to throw her out." Mitchell hesitated. "Sir, I'm sorry, but if we interfere—" "I know." Alexander's jaw tightened. "I know what's at stake." But he couldn't look away from Maya. Couldn't stop watching as her shoulders shook with sobs. Couldn't ignore the way her voice broke on his name. "Find out where she goes," he said finally. "When they throw her out, I want to know where she ends up. I want someone watching her, protecting her." "Yes, sir." "And James?" "Sir." Alexander's voice was barely above a whisper. "She cannot be harmed. No matter what happens, no matter what it costs, she is not to be harmed." Back in the mansion, the final piece of the trap was being set. Victoria stood in Alexander's study, rifling through his desk drawers with practiced efficiency. She had waited 2 days for this, 2 days of playing the grieving aunt, while her patience wore thinner and thinner. The will was clear. Everything went to Alexander's foundation. But Victoria knew there were loopholes. There were always loopholes, if you knew where to look. "Aunt Victoria." She turned to find Brandon in the doorway holding something in his hand. A gold pen. "Where did you get that?" Victoria asked. Brandon smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. "I found it in the hallway. Must have fallen out of Uncle Alex's pocket at some point." He turned the pen over, admiring it. Monogrammed. Must be worth a few thousand at least. Victoria studied him. "What are you thinking, Brandon?" "I'm thinking that Maid has been awfully emotional about our dear departed Alexander. I'm thinking she was in his study alone 2 nights ago. I'm thinking—" He let the sentence trail off suggestively. Victoria's eyes narrowed, then slowly she smiled. "You're more useful than I gave you credit for." Brandon's grin widened. "I learned from the best." Maya returned to the mansion at 4 a.m. exhausted and red-eyed. She tried to slip in quietly through the servants' entrance, hoping to get a few hours of sleep before the morning duties began. But as she crept down the hallway toward her room, she noticed something wrong. Her door was open. She froze, her heart hammering. She always locked her door. Always. Slowly, carefully, she approached. And then she saw it. Her room had been ransacked. Her mattress was overturned. Her few belongings were scattered across the floor. And there, in the middle of the chaos, glinting in the dim light from the hallway, Alexander's gold pen. Maya's blood turned to ice. She didn't touch it. She didn't move. She just stood there, staring at the pen that had definitely, absolutely not been in her room when she left. "Well, well, well." The voice came from behind her. Maya spun around to find Victoria and Brandon standing in the hallway, flanked by 2 security guards. Marcus Williams was not among them. "What do we have here?" Victoria's voice was silk over steel. "The grieving maid returning from who knows where in the middle of the night. And look what we found in her room." "I didn't—" Maya's voice came out as a whisper. "That's not mine. Someone put it there." Victoria stepped closer, her eyes cold as winter. "Is that so? Someone broke into your room and planted Alexander's personal pen among your belongings? How convenient." "It's the truth." "The truth," Brandon said, stepping forward to pick up the pen, "is that this pen is worth more money than you'll make in 5 years. The truth is that you were in Alexander's study alone. The truth is that you've been sneaking around this house pretending to grieve for a man you barely knew." "I loved him," The words burst out before Maya could stop them. Silence. Victoria and Brandon exchanged a look. Then Victoria laughed. It was the cruelest sound Maya had ever heard. Loved him. Victoria's voice dripped with contempt. You loved him, a maid loving a billionaire. That's not love, girl. That's delusion. That's a fantasy cooked up by a desperate little gold digger who thought she could worm her way into... That's not true. Maya was crying now, but she didn't care. I never wanted anything from him. I never asked for anything. I just... Enough. Victoria raised her hand, and Maya fell silent. I've heard enough of your pathetic excuses. Pack your things. You have 10 minutes. Then you will be escorted off this property, and if you ever set foot here again, I will have you arrested for theft. Ma'am, please. Maya fell to her knees. Her pride shattered, her dignity abandoned. Please, I didn't steal anything. I would never. Victoria stepped back, her lip curled in disgust. Get her up. Get her out. The guards moved forward, grabbing Maya's arms, hauling her to her feet. She struggled, but they were too strong. Wait! Maya screamed. Please, Mr. Williams, Marcus. Someone help me. But Marcus was nowhere to be seen. No one was coming to help her. Please, she sobbed as they dragged her toward the door. Please, I'm innocent, please. Victoria watched her go, her expression unmoved. Brandon stood beside her, twirling the gold pen between his fingers. Well, he said cheerfully, that was easier than I expected. Victoria didn't respond. Her eyes were fixed on the doorway through which Maya had disappeared, calculating, always calculating. Make sure she has nowhere to go, Victoria said finally. I want her name ruined. I want everyone to know she's a thief. If she tries to speak to the press, if she tries to defend herself, if she breathes a word about this family... I understand, Brandon said. Don't worry, Aunt Victoria. She's nobody. By tomorrow, everyone will have forgotten she ever existed. Outside in the pouring rain, Maya Thompson stood at the gates of the Thornton estate, with nothing but a small bag containing everything she owned. The guards had pushed her through and locked the gates behind her without a word. She had begged them to listen. She had told them she was innocent. They hadn't even looked at her. Now she stood alone in the darkness, rain soaking through her clothes, with nowhere to go and no one to call. She had lost everything. Her job, her home, her reputation. The one place in the world where she had felt for just a moment that she might belong. And Alexander. She had lost Alexander. The grief hit her all over again, fresh and devastating, and she doubled over, gasping for breath through her sobs. I'm sorry, she whispered to the darkness. I'm so sorry. I couldn't even protect your memory. I couldn't even... She couldn't finish. The pain was too great. She started walking, not knowing where she was going, not caring. The rain beat down on her, cold and relentless. Cars passed without stopping. The world moved on around her, indifferent to her suffering. She had never felt so alone. Miles away in a private medical facility that didn't officially exist. Alexander Thornton watched the security feed from the mansion gates. He watched Maya standing in the rain. Watched her double over with grief. Watched her start walking into the darkness with nothing but a small bag. His hands were shaking. Actually, shaking. Alexander Thornton, who had faced down hostile takeovers and corporate warfare without breaking a sweat, was trembling with rage. They threw her out, he said, his voice deadly quiet. They accused her of theft and threw her out. Doctor, Mitchell stood nearby, his face grave. Sir, the plan? The plan. Alexander laughed, but there was no humor in it. The plan was to expose greed. The plan was to catch my aunt and cousin with their hands in the cookie jar. The plan was not to destroy an innocent woman. We can fix this. Once you reveal yourself. That could be weeks away, months. Alexander stood up, ignoring the pain in his still healing ribs. She could be dead by then. She has no money, no references, no one to vouch for her. Victoria will make sure of that. He turned to face the doctor, and his eyes were cold with determination. I want her protected. Now. Tonight. I don't care what it costs or what risks it creates. I want someone watching her every moment until I can fix this." "Yes, sir. And the plan?" Alexander was silent for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was different, harder, more dangerous. "The plan continues. But when I finally reveal myself, Victoria and Brandon will pay for this. Not just for the theft, not just for the manipulation. For her." He looked back at the screen where Maya's small figure was now barely visible in the distance. "For every tear she's cried. For every moment of pain they've caused her. They will pay." The rain had soaked through Maya's clothes by the time she reached the bus station 3 miles from the Thornton estate. Her shoes squelched with every step. Her teeth chattered uncontrollably. But she kept walking because stopping meant thinking, and thinking meant feeling, and feeling meant drowning. It was 5:47 a.m. when she finally collapsed onto a bench under the station's overhang. Her small bag sat beside her containing everything she owned in the world. 2 changes of clothes, a photograph of her sister Grace, $43 in cash. She pressed her palms against her eyes, trying to stop the tears. She had cried so much in the past few hours that her head throbbed and her throat burned. "Miss, you okay?" Maya looked up to find an elderly man watching her with concern. He wore a security guard uniform and held a steaming cup of coffee. "I'm fine," she managed. "Just waiting for a bus." The man studied her for a moment, taking in her soaked clothes and red-rimmed eyes. Then he held out the coffee. "Here, you look like you need this more than I do." Maya stared at the cup. Such a small kindness. After everything that had happened, such a small, simple kindness. The tears started again. "Hey now," the man said gently, sitting down beside her. "Whatever it is, it can't be that bad." "I lost my job," Maya whispered. "I lost everything, and they said I stole something, but I didn't. I swear I didn't." The man was quiet for a moment. Then he patted her shoulder. "You know what my grandmother used to say? She used to say that the truth is like the sun. You can shut it out for a time, but it ain't going away." Maya wiped her eyes. "What if no one believes the truth?" "Then you keep telling it anyway, because the truth has a way of coming out. It always does." He stood up, leaving the coffee in her hands. "Bus to Manhattan leaves in 20 minutes. You take care of yourself, miss." Maya watched him walk away, clutching the warm cup like a lifeline. The truth has a way of coming out. She wanted to believe that. God, she wanted to believe that. At 6:15 a.m., Maya boarded a bus to Manhattan with no plan and nowhere to go. At that same moment in the private medical facility, Alexander Thornton was making calls. "I need eyes on her now," he said into the phone. "She just boarded a bus to the city. I want to know where she gets off, where she goes, who she talks to." The voice on the other end belonged to David Chen, his head of private security. "Sir, we have a team ready. But I have to ask, why this level of protection for a former maid?" Alexander's grip tightened on the phone. "Because she's the only person who cried for me without wanting something in return. Because my family threw her into the street based on a lie. Because—" He stopped collecting himself. "Because I owe her, and I pay my debts." There was a pause. Then David said, "Understood, sir. We'll keep her safe." Alexander ended the call and turned back to the security monitors. Victoria was awake now, drinking coffee in the study that had once been his. Brandon sat across from her, laughing at something. They looked so comfortable, so confident. They had no idea what was coming. By 8 a.m., the news of Maya's dismissal had spread through the Thornton household. Mrs. Chen, the head housekeeper, called a meeting of the remaining staff in the kitchen. "I don't believe it," Maria, one of the junior maids, said immediately. "Maya would never steal anything. She's the most honest person I've ever met." "It doesn't matter what we believe," Mrs. Chen replied quietly. "Mrs. Thornton has made her decision." "Her decision?" An older cook named Bernard snorted. "You mean she found a convenient scapegoat? That girl was devoted to Mr. Alexander. She cried harder than anyone at the funeral. "Keep your voice down," Mrs. Chen hissed. "If Mrs. Thornton hears you defending her, then what, she'll fire me too." Bernard crossed his arms. "Maybe that wouldn't be such a bad thing. This house has become poisonous." "Bernard, please." "No, I've worked here for 12 years. I watched Mr. Alexander build this place from nothing, and I'm watching his aunt tear it apart piece by piece." He shook his head. That man deserved better than this, and so did Maya. The kitchen fell silent. Everyone was thinking the same thing, but no one else dared to say it. Mrs. Chen looked around at the assembled staff, her expression pained. We all do what we must to survive. Maya understood that better than anyone. At 9:30 a.m., Maya stood on a street corner in the Bronx staring at her phone. She had called 3 former references already. All 3 had told her the same thing. Someone had contacted them. Someone had told them that Maya Thompson was a thief, that she had been fired for stealing from her employer, that she was not to be trusted. Victoria Thornton was destroying her life, piece by piece. Maya's hands shook as she dialed her sister's number. Grace answered on the second ring. "Maya, what's wrong? You sound terrible." "Grace, Maya's voice broke. "I lost my job. They accused me of stealing. I didn't do it, but they threw me out anyway, and now I can't. I don't know what to—" "Slow down," Grace said firmly. "Take a breath. Tell me everything." So Maya did. She told Grace about Alexander's death, about the funeral, about the gold pen that had appeared in her room. She told her about Victoria's accusations and Brandon's smirk and the security guards who had dragged her out into the rain. By the end, she was crying again. "Come home," Grace said immediately. "Take the next bus to Georgia. We'll figure this out together." "I can't." Maya wiped her nose with her sleeve. "The bus ticket costs money I don't have. And even if I could get there, what then? I have nothing, Grace. No references, no savings, nothing. You have me. You'll always have me." "I know." Maya closed her eyes. "I know, but I can't run away. If I run, they win. If I run, everyone will believe I'm guilty." Grace was quiet for a moment. Then she said something that surprised Maya. "He must have meant a lot to you, Mr. Thornton." Maya's breath caught. "What?" "The way you talk about him, the way your voice changes when you say his name." Grace's tone was gentle. "You loved him, didn't you?" Maya opened her mouth to deny it, but she was so tired of lying, so tired of hiding. "Yes," she whispered. "I loved him, and I never got to tell him. And now he's gone, and his family is trying to destroy me, and I don't know why I'm even fighting anymore." "You're fighting because you're Maya Thompson," Grace said firmly. "Because our mama raised us to stand up for ourselves. Because the truth matters, even when it's hard." Maya laughed weakly. "You sound like this security guard I met at the bus station." "Smart man. Listen to him." Grace paused. "And Maya, don't give up. Something tells me this story isn't over yet." If only she knew how right she was. At 11 a.m., a woman named Maria Rodriguez approached Maya on the street. Maya was sitting on a park bench trying to figure out her next move when the stranger sat down beside her. "Maya Thompson?" the woman asked. Maya tensed. "Who wants to know?" "My name is Maria. I work for a private housing assistance program." She handed Maya a business card. "Someone referred you to us. They said you might need help." Maya stared at the card. "Someone referred me? Who?" Maria's expression was carefully neutral. "I'm not at liberty to say, but I can tell you that there's a safe house available. Clean room, 3 meals a day, job placement assistance. No questions asked." "I don't understand." Maya shook her head. "I don't know anyone who would... I don't have anyone who..." "Sometimes help comes from unexpected places," Maria said gently. "The only question is whether you're willing to accept it." Maya looked at the card in her hand. Safe house. It sounded too good to be true. But she was cold and hungry and desperate, and she had learned long ago that beggars couldn't be choosers. "Okay," she said quietly. "I'll go." Maria smiled. "Good. The car is waiting." Across the city, Alexander watched the live feed from his operative's hidden camera. He saw Maya hesitate, saw her make the decision to trust, saw her climb into the car that would take her somewhere safe. His shoulders relaxed slightly. She was okay. For now, she was okay. "Sir." Dr. Mitchell appeared in the doorway. "Your aunt is on the move. She's meeting with the lawyers again." Alexander turned away from the screen. "What's she doing now?" "Trying to reinterpret clauses in your will, looking for ways to access restricted funds." Mitchell hesitated. "She's also filed a police report against Maya Thompson. Theft over $10,000. Alexander's jaw clenched. "She's not satisfied with ruining the girl's reputation. She wants her in prison." "What do you want to do?" Alexander was silent for a long moment. Then he said, "Make the report disappear." "Sir?" "I have contacts in the police department. Make the report disappear. Lose the paperwork. Do whatever needs to be done." His voice hardened. "Maya Thompson will not spend a single day in jail for a crime she didn't commit." Mitchell nodded. "And your aunt?" "Let her keep digging her own grave. The deeper she goes, the harder she falls." At 2 p.m., Maya arrived at the safe house. It was a modest brownstone in Brooklyn, indistinguishable from the buildings around it. Maria led her inside and showed her to a small but clean room on the second floor. "You're safe here," Maria said. "Rest. Eat. When you're ready, we'll talk about next steps." Maya sat on the edge of the bed after Maria left, trying to process everything that had happened in the past 24 hours. Yesterday morning, she had been a maid in one of the wealthiest households in Connecticut. Now, she was a homeless woman in a stranger's safe house, accused of theft with her entire life in ruins. And Alexander was still dead. That was the worst part. Through all of this, through the accusations and the humiliation and the fear, the worst part was knowing that Alexander was gone, that she would never see him again, never hear his voice, never feel that quiet sense of safety that came from being in his presence. She lay down on the bed and cried herself to sleep. At 4:30 p.m., Victoria Thornton received a phone call that made her blood run cold. "What do you mean the report was rejected?" she demanded. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Thornton," the officer on the other end said. "There's insufficient evidence to proceed. The pen was found in Miss Thompson's room, but there's no proof she actually stole it. It could have been planted." "Planted?" "By whom? I'm telling you that girl is a thief." "Ma'am, without more evidence, there's nothing we can do. I'm sorry." Victoria slammed the phone down, her mind racing. How had this happened? The plan had been perfect. The evidence was clear. This should have been simple. "Problems?" Brandon asked from the doorway. "The police won't pursue charges." Victoria's voice was tight with fury. "Someone interfered." Brandon frowned. "Who would interfere? Who even cares about that girl?" "I don't know." Victoria turned to look out the window, her eyes narrowed. "But I intend to find out." At 6 p.m., Maya woke to find a meal waiting outside her door. She ate slowly, savoring every bite. She couldn't remember the last time she had eaten a real meal. Yesterday, the day before, time had lost all meaning. As she ate, her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "You are safe. Stay strong. The truth will come out." Maya stared at the message, her heart pounding. Who was sending her these messages? Who was protecting her? Who even knew she existed? She wanted to believe it was some kind of sign, some kind of proof that the universe hadn't completely abandoned her. But she had learned long ago not to trust in miracles. Still, she saved the message. And for the first time in days, she felt something other than despair. She felt hope. At 8 p.m., Alexander Thornton made a decision. He had been watching the feeds for hours. watching Victoria and Brandon scheme, watching Maya sleep fitfully in her safe house room, watching the world move on without him. And he realized that he couldn't wait any longer. "David," he said into the phone, "how soon can you arrange a meeting with the board? Sir, you want to reveal yourself. Not yet, but soon, very soon." Alexander's voice was cold with determination. "My aunt has gone too far. It's time to remind everyone who really controls this company." "What about Maya?" Alexander paused. When he spoke again, his voice was softer. "When the time is right, I'll explain everything to her. I'll tell her the truth. He stopped, unsure how to finish. "I'll make this right. Somehow. And if she can't forgive you for letting her suffer..." Alexander closed his eyes. "Then I'll accept that. But I'll still make sure she's taken care of. No matter what happens between us, she'll never have to struggle again." At 10 p.m., Maya stood at the window of her room, looking out at the city lights. She was thinking about Alexander, about the way he had asked her name, about the way he had defended her when no one else would, about the way he had said thank you, like he actually meant it. She was thinking about love, about how it had crept up on her without warning, about how it had grown in the spaces between moments, in the silence of empty hallways, in the quiet recognition of one invisible person by another. She was thinking about loss, about how it felt to love someone who was gone, about how grief could be both an ending and a beginning. And she was thinking about truth, about how it had a way of coming out no matter how deeply it was buried. She didn't know that the man she was mourning was alive. She didn't know that he was watching her at that very moment, his heart aching with every tear she shed. She didn't know that the truth was closer than she could ever imagine. But somewhere deep inside, in a place beyond logic and reason, Maya felt something stirring. A whisper of possibility, a hint of something yet to come. She pressed her hand against the cold window glass and made a silent promise. "I won't give up," she whispered to the night. "No matter what they do to me, no matter how hard it gets, I won't give up." And miles away, watching her through a screen, Alexander Thornton made the same promise. "I won't let them destroy you," he said quietly. "I swear it. Whatever it takes, however long it takes, I will make this right." The city hummed around them both, unaware that two lives separated by secrets and lies were about to collide in ways neither of them could predict. At 11:45 p.m., Victoria Thornton made a phone call that would change everything. "I need you to find out who's protecting that girl," she said into the phone. "Money is no object. I want to know who's working against me." The voice on the other end was smooth, professional. "Of course, Mrs. Thornton, but I should warn you, this kind of investigation can uncover unexpected things." "I don't care. I want answers." Victoria's grip tightened on the phone. "No one interferes with my plans. No one." She hung up, not knowing that the walls had ears, not knowing that every word she spoke was being recorded, not knowing that the trap she thought she was setting was actually closing around her. The clock struck midnight. A new day began, and somewhere between truth and lies, between love and loss, between the living and the presumed dead, a reckoning was coming. 3 days had passed since Maya arrived at the safe house, and she still couldn't understand why strangers were helping her. At 7:15 a.m. on the fourth day, she sat across from Maria in the small kitchen, a cup of coffee warming her hands. "Who's paying for all this?" Maya asked. "The room, the food, everything. Someone has to be paying." Maria's expression remained neutral. "There are people in this world who believe in helping others. That's all you need to know." "That's not an answer." "It's the only answer I can give you." Maria stood and refilled her own cup. "What I can tell you is that you have a job interview tomorrow. Administrative assistant at a logistics firm in Manhattan. The pay is decent. The hours are fair." Maya shook her head slowly. "They'll check my references. Victoria Thornton has made sure everyone knows I'm a thief. This company won't be checking those references. Why not? Maria turned to look at her directly. Because sometimes Maya doors open that you didn't even know existed. The question is whether you're willing to walk through them. Maya wanted to argue. She wanted to demand answers, but she was tired of fighting, and the truth was she had no other options. Fine, she said quietly. I'll go to the interview. Good. Maria handed her a folder. Everything you need is in here. Address, contact information, what to wear. Be there at 9 a.m. sharp. After Maria left, Maya opened the folder and stared at the contents. A new life handed to her by invisible hands. It should have felt like a miracle. Instead, it felt like another cage. But a cage was better than the streets. At 10 a.m., Victoria Thornton received a report that made her hands shake with rage. What do you mean there's no trail? She demanded, pacing her nephew's former study. Someone is protecting that girl. Someone with money. Someone with power. Find them. The private investigator on the other end of the phone cleared his throat. Mrs. Thornton, whoever is behind this is extremely careful. The safe house is registered to a shell company. The shell company is owned by another shell company. The trail goes cold in the Cayman Islands. Then keep digging. Ma'am, with respect, this level of protection suggests someone with significant resources. Someone who knows what they're doing. There was a pause. Are you certain you want to continue pursuing this? Victoria's jaw tightened. I don't pay you for your opinions. I pay you for results. Get me results. She hung up and turned to find Brandon watching her from the doorway. Trouble? He asked, a hint of amusement in his voice. Someone is interfering. Someone with deep pockets and deeper connections. Victoria began pacing again. I want to know who. I want to know why. And I want them dealt with. Brandon pushed himself off the doorframe and sauntered into the room. Maybe you're making this more complicated than it needs to be. The girl is gone. She's ruined. Who cares if someone's giving her a place to sleep? I care. Victoria stopped pacing and fixed him with a cold stare. Because whoever is protecting her might also be watching us, listening to us, waiting for us to make a mistake. For the first time, Brandon looked uncertain. You think someone's monitoring us? I think Alexander was a paranoid man who trusted no one. Victoria's eyes swept the room. And I think we'd be fools to assume his paranoia died with him. At 11:30 a.m., Alexander Thornton sat in his hidden facility watching the conversation he had just recorded. She's getting close, David Chen said from beside him. If she keeps digging, she might find something. Let her dig. Alexander leaned back in his chair, his eyes never leaving the screen. Every step she takes is another piece of evidence. Every person she contacts is another witness. Every move she makes tightens the noose around her own neck. And Maya? Alexander's expression softened almost imperceptibly. How did she seem this morning? Confused, suspicious, but she agreed to take the job interview. David hesitated. Sir, she's going to have questions. Sooner or later, she's going to want to know who's behind all this. I know. What will you tell her? Alexander was silent for a long moment. Then he said, The truth. When the time is right, I'll tell her everything. And if she hates you for it, for letting her suffer, for watching while they threw her into the street. Alexander closed his eyes. Then I'll accept that. But I won't lie to her. I've spent my whole life surrounded by people who lie. She deserves better. At 1 p.m., Maya received an unexpected visitor. She was in her room reviewing the job interview materials when Maria knocked on the door. Someone's here to see you. Maya's heart jumped. Who? A man named Marcus Williams. He says he worked with you at the Thornton estate. Maya was on her feet before Maria finished speaking. Marcus, the head of security, the one person who had shown her kindness in those final terrible hours. She found him waiting in the small sitting room, his large frame looking out of place among the modest furniture. When he saw her, relief washed over his face. "Thank God," he said. "I wasn't sure I'd be able to find you." "How did you find me?" Maya asked, her voice wary. Marcus hesitated. "I have contacts. People who owed me favors." He took a step toward her. "Maya, I had to make sure you were okay. What they did to you was wrong. Do you know who's helping me? Who's paying for all this?" Marcus's expression flickered. Just for a moment, something passed across his face that Maya couldn't identify. "I can't say." "Can't or won't?" "Both." Marcus met her eyes directly. "But I can tell you this. You have friends, Maya, more than you know, and the people who hurt you are going to pay for what they did." Maya shook her head. "Victoria Thornton has money power connections. She's untouchable." "No one is untouchable." Marcus's voice dropped. "No one." Something in his tone made Maya's breath catch. "Marcus, what do you know? What aren't you telling me?" For a long moment he didn't answer. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small USB drive. "If something happens to me," he said, pressing it into her hand, "this goes to the police, not the local cops, the FBI. Understand?" Maya stared at the drive in her palm. "What is this insurance?" Marcus was already moving toward the door. "Keep it safe. And Maya." He paused, looking back at her. "Don't lose hope. The truth has a way of coming out." He was gone before she could respond. At 3:45 p.m., Victoria Thornton made a discovery that changed everything. She was going through Alexander's files again, looking for anything she might have missed when she found it. A hidden folder on his computer protected by a password she had never been able to crack. Until now. Her private investigator had finally earned his fee. He had found a former IT employee who remembered the password Alexander had used. It had cost Victoria $50,000. But as she typed the characters into the computer and watched the folder unlock, she knew it was worth every penny. The folder contained hundreds of files, bank records, email transcripts, video recordings, and at the top, a document titled Insurance Policy. Victoria clicked on it and began to read. Her face went white. "Brandon!" she screamed. "Brandon, get in here now!" Brandon appeared within seconds, alarmed by the panic in her voice. "What is it? What's wrong?" Victoria pointed at the screen, her hand trembling. He knew. Alexander knew everything. Brandon leaned in to look, and his own face drained of color. This is a record of every transaction we've made, every meeting we've had, every conversation we thought was private." "He was watching us." Victoria's voice was barely a whisper. "For years he was watching us." "But he's dead." Brandon straightened, trying to regain his composure. "He's dead, Aunt Victoria. This information dies with him." "Does it?" Victoria turned to look at him, fear in her eyes for the first time. "Or did he leave it with someone, a lawyer, a friend, someone we don't know about?" The question hung in the air, unanswered. At 5 p.m., Alexander received word of his aunt's discovery. "She found the folder," David reported. "The decoy folder." Alexander nodded slowly. "Good. Let her think she's found my secrets. It will keep her busy while we prepare the real surprise." "Sir, she's panicking. If she panics enough, she might do something desperate." "That's exactly what I'm counting on." Alexander stood and walked to the window, his back to David. "Desperate people make mistakes, and when she makes hers, we'll be ready." "What kind of mistake are you expecting?" Alexander turned, and there was something cold in his eyes. "She's going to try to destroy the evidence, and when she does, she's going to discover that the evidence was never on that computer in the first place." At 6:30 p.m., Maya sat alone in her room, staring at the USB drive Marcus had given her. Insurance, he had called it. But insurance against what? And why had he given it to her of all people? She thought about plugging it into her phone, looking at what was on it. But something held her back. Fear, maybe. or the sense that once she saw what was on that drive, there would be no going back. Her phone buzzed. Another text from the unknown number. Job interview tomorrow, 9 a.m. Don't be late. Your future is waiting. Maya typed back before she could stop herself. Who are you? Why are you helping me? The response came almost immediately. Someone who knows the truth. Someone who believes in you. That's not an answer. It's all I can give you, for now. Maya stared at the screen, frustration and gratitude warring in her chest. Whoever this person was, they had given her shelter food a chance at a new job. They had protected her when no one else would. But they were also keeping secrets. And Maya had learned the hard way that secrets could be as dangerous as lies. At 8 p.m., Victoria Thornton made her move. We need to destroy everything, she told Brandon. The computer, the files, all of it. If this information gets out, we're finished. And the girl? Brandon asked. She might know something. She was always lurking around Alexander's study. Victoria's eyes narrowed. Find her. I don't care how. Find her and find out what she knows. And if she knows too much? Victoria didn't answer, but the look in her eyes said everything. At 9:30 p.m., Maya woke to the sound of her door opening. She sat up, her heart pounding, expecting Maria or maybe Marcus returning. Instead, she found a stranger standing in her doorway. A large man in dark clothes, his face hidden by shadows. Maya Thompson. His voice was flat, emotionless. Who are you? How did you get in here? The man took a step closer. Mrs. Victoria Thornton sends her regards. Maya's blood turned to ice. What do you want? Information. Another step. What did Alexander Thornton tell you? What do you know about his files? Nothing. I don't know anything. Maya scrambled backward on the bed, looking for an escape route. I was just a maid. He never told me anything. I don't believe you. The man reached into his jacket, and Maya saw the glint of metal. Please, she whispered. Please, I don't know anything, I swear. Then you're useless. He raised his arm, and Maya screamed. The door behind him exploded inward. Two men in black tactical gear rushed in, moving with precision and speed. Before Victoria's man could react, he was on the ground, disarmed and immobilized. Are you hurt? One of the tactical team members was at Maya's side, checking her for injuries. Miss Thompson, are you hurt? Maya couldn't speak. She could only stare at the chaos around her, her body shaking uncontrollably. She's in shock, someone said. Get her out of here. Where are we taking her? There was a pause. Then a voice came through someone's earpiece, clear and commanding. Bring her to me. At 10:15 p.m., Maya found herself in the back of a black SUV surrounded by men she didn't know, being driven to a destination no one would tell her. Where are we going? She asked for the 5th time. Who sent you? What's happening? You're safe now, one of the men replied. That's all you need to know. That's not an answer. The man almost smiled. You'll get your answers soon. I promise. Maya wanted to argue, but exhaustion was overtaking her. The adrenaline was fading, leaving behind only fear and confusion and a bone-deep weariness. She closed her eyes and let the motion of the car carry her into the unknown. At 10:47 p.m., Alexander Thornton received the call he had been dreading. She's on her way here, David reported. She's scared, confused, and asking questions. Is she hurt? No. We got there in time. Alexander exhaled slowly. Thank God. Sir, she's going to want answers, real answers. Are you prepared for that? Alexander looked at himself in the mirror across the room. The same face that had appeared on magazine covers and television screens. The same face that Maya had mourned at an empty grave. No, he admitted. But I don't have a choice anymore. Victoria sent someone to hurt her. This has gone too far. So, you're going to reveal yourself tonight? Alexander closed his eyes. Yes. Tonight. At 11:30 p.m., the SUV pulled into an underground parking garage beneath a building Maya didn't recognize. The tactical team escorted her through security checkpoints, up elevators down hallways that seemed to stretch forever. Finally, they stopped outside a set of heavy doors. "Through here," one of the men said. "He's waiting for you." Maya's heart was pounding so hard she could barely breathe. Who's waiting for me?" The man didn't answer. He just opened the door and stepped aside. Maya walked through. The room beyond was simple, almost stark. A desk, some chairs, monitors covering one wall. And standing by the window, his back to her, was a man in a dark suit. "Hello, Maya." The voice hit her like a physical blow. She knew that voice. She had heard it in her dreams every night since his funeral. She had spoken to it at his grave, pouring out her heart to cold stone. It was impossible. It was insane. It couldn't be real. The man turned around, and Maya Thompson found herself face to face with Alexander Thornton. "No," she whispered, backing away. "No, no, no. You're dead. I saw your grave. I cried at your grave." "I know." Alexander's voice was gentle, but there was pain in his eyes. "I was there. I watched you." "You watched me." Maya's shock was giving way to something else, something hotter. "You watched me cry. You watched them throw me into the street. You watched and you did nothing. I did everything I could without revealing myself. The safe house, the job, the protection. That was you." Maya's laugh was harsh, broken. "You were playing games while I was being destroyed." "It wasn't a game." Alexander took a step toward her, and she took a step back. "It was a plan. A plan to expose my aunt and cousin for who they really are. A plan to protect my company, my legacy, everything I've built. And I was just collateral damage." "No." His voice broke on the word. "Never. Maya, you were never supposed to be hurt. When they planted that pen, when they accused you of theft, I wanted to reveal myself immediately. I wanted to walk into that mansion and destroy them both." "Then why didn't you?" "Because I needed more evidence. Because if I revealed myself too soon, they would have destroyed everything and walked away free." Alexander's hands clenched at his sides. "I made a choice, and that choice hurt you, and I will never forgive myself for that." Maya stared at him, her chest heaving, tears streaming down her face. "You let me believe you were dead. You let me mourn you. You heard me confess." She couldn't finish. The humiliation was too raw. "I heard everything," Alexander said quietly. "Every word, every prayer, every confession." "Then you know." Maya's voice was barely audible. "You know I loved you." "Yes." "Did you enjoy listening? Was it entertaining, hearing the pathetic maid pour out her heart to a dead man?" "No." Alexander crossed the distance between them in 3 strides, stopping just inches away. "It was the most honest, beautiful thing anyone has ever said to me. It was the moment I realized that everything I thought I knew about loyalty and love was wrong." Maya was trembling. From anger, from shock, from the overwhelming sensation of standing close to a ghost who was suddenly impossibly real. "I don't know how to feel," she whispered. "I don't know if I should hit you or hug you or run away and never look back." "You can do any of those things." Alexander's voice was raw. "You can hate me. You can leave. You can never speak to me again. I'll accept whatever you decide, but I need you to know something first." "What?" Alexander reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away. She didn't. His fingers touched her face, wiping away tears. "I love you," he said simply. "Not because you're kind, though you are. Not because you're loyal, though you are that too. I love you because you saw me. The real me. Not the billionaire, not the empire builder, not the face on the magazine covers. Just me. Just a man." Maya's breath caught in her throat. "No one has ever seen me before." Alexander continued. Not my family, not my friends, not the dozens of people who claim to love me. Only you. A maid who had every reason to hate the world, who chose to be kind instead. Who prayed for me when no one else did. Who cried at my grave like you had lost something precious. I did lose something precious, Maya whispered. I lost the only person who ever made me feel like I mattered. You matter. Alexander's forehead touched hers. You matter more than you know, more than I ever knew how to tell you. They stood there in silence, breathing the same air separated by years of invisibility and secrets and fear. Then Maya pulled back. I need time, she said. This is too much. I can't. I need time. Alexander nodded slowly, though the pain in his eyes was unmistakable. Take all the time you need. And your aunt, your cousin, what happens now? Alexander's expression hardened. Tomorrow morning, I walk into my own boardroom and show them what happens to people who betray me. Maya looked at him. Really looked at him, and saw something she had never seen before. Not the cold billionaire, not the distant employer, but a man who had been wounded by the same people who had wounded her. A man who was fighting back the only way he knew how. I want to be there, she heard herself say. When you confront them, I want to see their faces. Alexander's eyes widened. Are you sure? Maya thought about Victoria's cruelty, Brandon's smirk, the guards who had dragged her into the rain, the days of hunger and fear and humiliation. I'm sure, she said. I want to look them in the eye when they realize they lost. For the first time since she had entered the room, Alexander smiled. Then you will. Maya didn't sleep that night. She sat in a guest room at Alexander's facility, staring at the wall, trying to process everything that had happened. The man she had mourned was alive. The man she had confessed her love to had heard every word. The man she thought was gone forever was now asking her to stand beside him while he destroyed his own family. At 4:30 a.m., there was a soft knock on her door. Come in, she said. Alexander entered, looking as sleepless as she felt. He had changed into a fresh suit, but there were shadows under his eyes and tension in his jaw. I wanted to check on you, he said. Make sure you hadn't changed your mind. I haven't. Maya stood smoothing down the clothes someone had provided for her. But I have questions. I expected you would. Why me? Maya's voice was steady, but her hands trembled. Out of everyone in that house, why did you notice me? Why did you care what happened to me? Alexander was quiet for a moment. Then he sat down in the chair across from her bed, his elbows on his knees, his hands clasped together. Do you remember the day you started working at the mansion? Maya nodded slowly. 3 years ago, August. You were the only applicant who didn't try to impress me. Everyone else came in with rehearsed smiles and polished answers, trying to figure out what I wanted to hear. Alexander looked up at her. But you just answered honestly. You said you needed the job because your sister was sick. You said you would work hard because that's who you are. And when I asked why I should hire you, do you remember what you said? Maya's throat tightened. I said, I didn't know why you should hire me. I just knew I wouldn't let you down. That was the first honest thing anyone had said to me in years. Alexander's voice was rough. And I thought this one is different. This one is real. So you watched me. I noticed you. There's a difference. He stood moving toward the window. I noticed how you treated everyone with respect, even when they didn't deserve it. I noticed how you never complained, even when Victoria was cruel. I noticed how you prayed before every meal quietly, when you thought no one was looking. Maya's eyes burned. I didn't know anyone was looking. That's exactly the point. Alexander turned to face her. You were the same person, whether anyone was watching or not. In a world full of performers, you were genuine. And yet you let them hurt me. The words hung in the air, sharp and unforgiving. Alexander didn't flinch. Yes, I did, and I will spend the rest of my life trying to make that right. At 6 a.m., the preparations began. David Chen arrived with a team of lawyers and security personnel, briefing everyone on the plan. The board meeting was scheduled for 9 a.m. Board members had been summoned under the pretense of an emergency session regarding the estate. Victoria and Brandon would be there expecting to finalize their control over Alexander's empire. They had no idea what was coming. The legal team has reviewed all the evidence, David explained. We have recordings of Victoria and Brandon discussing embezzlement. We have documentation of the funds they've already moved. We have witness testimony from staff members who saw them plant the pen in Maya's room. Maya's head snapped up. Witness testimony who? Mrs. Chen, the head housekeeper, and Bernard, the cook. David smiled slightly. Not everyone in that house was loyal to Victoria. Some people remembered who they really worked for. Maya thought of the staff meeting after Alexander's funeral, the frightened faces, the whispered conversations, Mrs. Chen's pained expression as she told everyone to keep quiet. They had been afraid, but they hadn't forgotten. At 7:30 a.m., Alexander asked to speak with Maya alone. "There's something I need to tell you before we go," he said. "Something you deserve to know." Maya braced herself. "What is it?" "The man Victoria sent to hurt you last night. He wasn't just trying to scare you." Alexander's jaw tightened. "He had orders to make you disappear permanently." Maya's blood ran cold. "She wanted me dead. She was afraid of what you might know, what Alexander might have told you." He took a step closer. "When my team intercepted him, he confessed everything. Victoria offered him $100,000 to make sure you never talked." Maya's legs gave out beneath her. She sank into a chair, her heart racing. "I knew she was cruel," she whispered. "But I never thought she would." "She's not just cruel. She's dangerous." Alexander knelt in front of her, taking her hands in his. "That's why I need you to understand what we're walking into today. This isn't just a business meeting. It's a confrontation with people who have already proven they'll do anything to protect their interests. Including murder." "Yes." Maya looked down at their joined hands. His grip was warm, steady, anchoring her when everything else felt like chaos. "I'm still coming," she said quietly. "I need to see this through." "I know." Alexander squeezed her hands. "That's one of the things I love about you." At 8:45 a.m., two black SUVs pulled up to the headquarters of Thornton Holdings in Manhattan. Maya sat in the back of the first vehicle, her heart pounding against her ribs. Alexander sat beside her, his expression unreadable. David Chen was in the front seat coordinating with the security team through an earpiece. "They're all inside," David reported. "Victoria, Brandon, the board members, the lawyers. Everyone's accounted for." Alexander nodded. "Let's go." They entered through a private entrance, avoiding the main lobby where reporters had somehow gathered. News of an emergency board meeting had leaked, and speculation was running wild. Maya kept her head down, following Alexander through security checkpoints and private elevators. Her palms were sweating. Her legs felt like rubber. "You okay?" Alexander asked quietly. "No," she admitted. "But I'm here." He reached out and squeezed her hand briefly. "That's all that matters." At 9:02 a.m., the doors to the boardroom opened. Victoria Thornton sat at the head of the long table, dressed in impeccable black, looking every inch the queen she believed herself to be. Brandon lounged beside her, his posture deliberately casual. Around them, board members shifted uncomfortably, sensing something in the air they couldn't quite name. "This meeting will come to order," Victoria announced. "We have important matters to discuss regarding the future of Thornton Holdings." "I couldn't agree more." The voice came from the doorway. Every head in the room turned. Alexander Thornton stepped into the boardroom alive and whole, his presence filling the space like a thunderclap. Victoria's face went white. Her carefully constructed composure shattered in an instant. "No," she breathed. "No, that's impossible." Brandon shot to his feet, knocking his chair backward. "What the hell is this? This is some kind of trick. It has to be." "No trick?" Alexander walked calmly to the head of the table, stopping just feet from his aunt. "I'm very much alive, Victoria. Disappointed." The silence in the room was absolute. Board members stared in shock. Lawyers dropped their pens. Someone let out a strangled gasp. Victoria recovered first, her survival instincts kicking in. "Alexander, thank God. We thought you were dead. The accident, the explosion, we were devastated." "Were you?" Alexander's voice was ice. "Is that why you started moving my money within hours of my supposed death? Is that why you falsified documents, bribed officials, and accused an innocent woman of theft?" Victoria's face flickered. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Then let me refresh your memory." Alexander gestured, and David Chen activated the screen at the front of the room. Video footage began to play. Victoria and Brandon in the study discussing how to interpret the will. Victoria on the phone ordering the private investigator to destroy Maya. Brandon planting the pen in Maya's room, captured by a hidden camera he never knew existed. The room watched in horrified silence. "You've been watching us," Brandon said, his voice shaking. "This whole time you've been watching us." "I built this company from nothing," Alexander replied. "Did you really think I would leave it unprotected?" Victoria stood slowly, her hands gripping the table for support. "Alexander, you have to understand. We were trying to protect the company, protect the family legacy. By stealing from me, by framing an innocent woman, by sending someone to murder her when she became inconvenient." Gasps echoed around the room. "Murder!" one of the board members exclaimed. "What is he talking about?" Alexander turned to the assembled group. "Last night my aunt hired a man to kill Maya Thompson, the maid she falsely accused of theft. The man is currently in police custody. He's provided a full confession." Victoria's composure cracked completely. "That's a lie. I never ordered anyone to—" "We have recordings, Victoria." Alexander's voice cut through her denial. "We have bank transfers showing the payment. We have everything." The doors opened again, and 2 police officers entered, followed by Detective James Morrison of the NYPD. "Victoria Thornton Brandon Thornton," the detective announced. "You're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, embezzlement, and fraud." "This is outrageous," Brandon shouted as an officer moved toward him. "You can't do this. We have rights." "You have the right to remain silent," the officer replied, snapping handcuffs around his wrists. "I suggest you use it." Victoria didn't struggle as she was handcuffed. She stared at Alexander with pure hatred burning in her eyes. "You'll regret this," she hissed. "I raised you. I took care of you after your mother died, and this is how you repay me." Alexander leaned close, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. "You never raised me, Victoria. You tolerated me while waiting for me to die so you could take everything." His jaw tightened. "The only thing I regret is not seeing you clearly sooner." As the police led Victoria and Brandon away, the boardroom erupted into chaos. Board members shouted questions. Lawyers demanded explanations. The carefully ordered world of Thornton Holdings was collapsing into pandemonium. Through it all, Maya stood near the back of the room watching. She saw Victoria's face as she passed the mask of sophistication stripped away to reveal the ugliness beneath. She saw Brandon's terror, his arrogant confidence finally shattered. She saw the people who had watched her be destroyed, now watching her destroyers fall. It should have felt like victory. It should have felt like justice. Instead, Maya felt empty. At 10:30 a.m., the chaos began to settle. Alexander addressed the board explaining that he would resume control of the company effective immediately. Legal teams would review all decisions made during his absence. Anyone complicit in Victoria and Brandon's schemes would face consequences. Through it all, Maya remained silent, watching, processing. When the meeting finally adjourned, Alexander found her standing by the window, staring out at the Manhattan skyline. "How do you feel?" he asked. "I don't know." Maya's voice was distant. "I thought I would feel satisfied, vindicated, but I just feel tired." Justice doesn't always feel the way we expect it to. Is that what this was, justice? Maya turned to face him. Or was it revenge? Alexander considered the question carefully. Both maybe. Victoria and Brandon would have destroyed this company and hurt countless people. Stopping them was necessary. And exposing them publicly, making sure the whole world knew what they did. That was for you. Alexander's voice softened. They took your reputation. They made people believe you were a thief. The only way to fix that was to show everyone the truth. Maya was quiet for a long moment. Then she said something that surprised them both. I need to go back to the cemetery. Alexander frowned. Why? Because I said goodbye to someone there. Someone I thought was dead. Maya met his eyes. And now I need to figure out what it means that he's alive. At 12:15 p.m., Maya stood once again before Alexander Thornton's empty grave. She had asked to come alone, and Alexander had respected her wishes, waiting in the car with David Chen while she made her pilgrimage. The grave looked different in daylight, smaller somehow, less overwhelming, just stone and earth and flowers that were starting to wilt. I cried here, Maya said aloud. I told you I loved you. I confessed things I had never told anyone. The headstone stared back at her silent and cold. And you were listening. Somewhere, wherever you were hiding, you were listening to me pour out my heart. She knelt her fingers tracing the carved letters of his name. I don't know how to feel about that. Part of me is angry. Part of me is embarrassed. Part of me is relieved that you're alive. She closed her eyes. But mostly I'm confused. Because I loved a dead man. I mourned a ghost. And now that ghost is standing in front of me telling me he loves me back. When she opened her eyes, tears were streaming down her face. How do I trust this? How do I trust you? You let me suffer. You watched me break. You could have stopped it at any time, but you chose your plan over my pain. She stood wiping her face with the back of her hand. I need time, Alexander. I need to figure out who I am outside of that mansion, outside of grief, outside of all of this. I need to find myself before I can even think about finding us. At 1 p.m., Maya walked back to the car where Alexander was waiting. Well, he asked. I'm going home, she said. To Georgia, to see my sister. Alexander's face fell, but he nodded. For how long? I don't know. As long as it takes. And us. Maya looked at him. Really looked at him, seeing both the man she had loved and the stranger she was still trying to understand. I don't know that either. She reached out and touched his face just once. But I know that if this is real, if what we feel is real, it will still be there when I come back. And if you don't come back, then it wasn't meant to be. Maya pulled her hand away. But Alexander, thank you. For saving me. For telling me the truth. For loving me in whatever way you could. I'll wait, Alexander said. However long it takes. I'll wait. At 3:45 p.m., Maya Thompson boarded a bus to Savannah, Georgia. She carried a small bag containing everything she owned, the same bag she had carried out of the Thornton mansion just days ago. But she also carried something new. A phone with Alexander's number programmed in. A bank card linked to an account he had opened in her name. And a letter he had written her which she hadn't yet read. As the bus pulled away from the station, Maya watched Manhattan disappear behind her. She thought about the past week. The funeral. The accusation. The cemetery. The revelation. The confrontation. It felt like a lifetime had passed. She thought about Alexander. His confession. His apology. His promise to wait. She thought about love and whether it could survive deception, even well-intentioned deception. And she thought about herself, the invisible maid, the accused thief, the woman who had loved a billionaire and been loved in return. At 4:30 p.m., Maya finally opened the letter. Alexander's handwriting was precise, elegant, exactly what she would have expected from a man who built empires with his signature. Dear Maya, by the time you read this, you'll be on your way home. I want you to know that I understand why you need to go. I understand that I hurt you, even though I never intended to. I understand that trust once broken takes time to rebuild. But I also want you to tell you something I should have said years ago, back when you were just a maid, and I was just a man who noticed you in the crowd. You are not invisible. You have never been invisible. Not to me. From the moment I saw you, I knew you were different. There was a light in you, a goodness that I had never encountered before. And every day I watched you move through that house, treating everyone with kindness, working without complaint, praying without performance. That light grew brighter. I was afraid to acknowledge what I felt. I told myself it was inappropriate. I told myself a billionaire and a maid could never work. I told myself 100 different lies to avoid the simple truth. I loved you. I have always loved you, and I always will. Go home, see your sister, find yourself, and know that whatever you decide, whatever path you choose, I will respect it. But Maya, if there's even a small part of you that believes we could have a future, please come back. Because I don't want to spend the rest of my life wondering what might have been. I'm not asking for an answer now. I'm not even asking for hope. I'm just asking you to remember that somewhere in New York, there's a man who sees you, who has always seen you, who will wait as long as it takes for you to see him back. With all my heart, Alexander. Maya read the letter 3 times. By the end, she was crying again. But these tears were different. Not grief, not anger. Something softer, something that felt almost like hope. At 6 p.m., her phone buzzed with a text from Alexander. Are you okay? She hesitated, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. Then she typed back. I read your letter. A long pause. Then, and Maya looked out the window at the passing countryside. Green fields, open sky. A world that suddenly seemed full of possibilities she had never allowed herself to imagine. And I don't have an answer yet, she wrote. But Alexander, I'm not saying goodbye. I'm just saying wait for me. His response came immediately. Forever if I have to. Maya smiled through her tears. Forever was a long time. But for the first time in her life, she believed it might be possible. At 9:47 p.m., the bus pulled into Savannah. Grace was waiting at the station, thinner than Maya remembered, but with the same warm smile that had always made Maya feel like home. Maya? Grace ran forward, throwing her arms around her sister. I've been so worried. Your texts were so vague. What happened? Are you okay? Maya held her sister tight, breathing in the familiar scent of lavender and home. I'm okay, she said. But Grace, I have so much to tell you. About the job, the accusations. About everything. Maya pulled back, looking at her sister with eyes that had seen too much in too short a time. About a billionaire who faked his death. About love that survived grief. About a maid who turned out to matter more than she ever knew. Grace stared at her. Maya, what on earth are you talking about? Maya laughed, a real laugh, the first one in days. Come on, she said, taking her sister's hand. Let's go home. This is going to take a while. 3 weeks passed in the small house outside Savannah where Maya had grown up. Grace listened to everything. The whole story, from the broken vase to the empty grave to the man who had returned from the dead. She listened without interrupting, her eyes growing wider with each revelation. When Maya finally finished, Grace sat in silence for a long moment. He faked his death, Grace said slowly. He watched you cry at his grave. He let his family destroy you. And then he told you he loves you. Yes. And you believe him. Maya looked down at her hands. I don't know what I believe anymore. Grace reached across the table and took her sister's hands. Maya, look at me. Maya raised her eyes. Do you love him? The question hung in the air, simple and devastating. Yes, Maya whispered. God help me, I do. Then what are you doing here? Maya pulled her hands away. It's not that simple. He hurt me, Grace. He let me suffer when he could have stopped it. How do I trust someone who did that? Grace was quiet for a moment. Then she said something that caught Maya off guard. When Mama was dying, do you remember what she told us? Maya's throat tightened. She told us to be strong. No. She told us that love isn't about being perfect. It's about being honest. Grace leaned forward. Alexander made a choice that hurt you. But he's also been honest about why he made it. He's been honest about his regret. He's been honest about his feelings. That doesn't erase what happened. No, it doesn't. But Maya, you've spent your whole life waiting for someone to see you, someone to value you, someone to love you for who you are. Grace's eyes were fierce. And now that person is here, flawed and complicated and real, and you're running away. I'm not running, I'm thinking. You've been thinking for 3 weeks. How much longer do you need? Maya didn't have an answer. At 7:30 a.m. the next morning, Maya's phone rang. She didn't recognize the number, but something made her answer. Miss Thompson, a professional voice. This is Detective Morrison from the NYPD. I'm calling to inform you that the trial date has been set for Victoria and Brandon Thornton. Maya's heart skipped. Trial date? Yes, ma'am. The DA is requesting your testimony as a key witness. The hearing is scheduled for next month. There was a pause. I understand this may be difficult, but your testimony could be crucial in securing a conviction. Maya closed her eyes. I'll be there. Thank you, Miss Thompson. A subpoena will be sent to your current address. After she hung up, Maya sat on the edge of her bed staring at the wall. She had thought she could escape. She had thought she could come home and heal and figure things out in peace. But the past wasn't done with her yet. At 9 a.m. she called Alexander. He answered on the first ring as if he had been waiting by the phone. Maya. His voice was warm, hopeful, cautious all at once. How are you? The detective called. About the trial. A pause. I know. They called me too. I have to come back. To testify. You don't have to do anything. Alexander's voice was gentle. If it's too much, we can find another way. There's plenty of evidence without your testimony. No. Maya's voice was firm. I want to testify. I want to look Victoria in the eye and tell the world what she did to me. Silence on the other end. Then, I understand. Alexander. Yes. Maya hesitated. She had so much to say, so many questions, so many feelings she still couldn't untangle. Nothing, she finally said. I'll see you in New York. At 2 p.m., Grace found Maya packing her bag. You're leaving. I have to go back. There's a trial. Grace watched her for a moment. Is that the only reason? Maya stopped packing. What do you mean? I mean, is the trial the only reason you're going back? Or is there something else? Maya sank onto the bed. I don't know, Grace. I honestly don't know. Grace sat down beside her. Let me tell you something. When I was sick, when we didn't know if I was going to make it, I had a lot of time to think. About life. About regret. About the things I wished I had done differently. Grace? Let me finish. Grace took her hand. The biggest regret I had wasn't the places I never visited or the things I never bought. It was the feelings I never expressed, the people I pushed away because I was scared. I'm not pushing him away. Aren't you? Grace's eyes were kind but piercing. Maya, you found something rare, Someone who sees you. Someone who loves you. Someone who's willing to wait forever for you to make up your mind. She squeezed her sister's hand. Don't let fear make this decision for you. At 6:47 p.m., Maya boarded a bus back to New York. This time, she didn't feel like she was running. She felt like she was returning to what she wasn't sure yet. But for the first time in weeks, the uncertainty didn't feel like a burden. It felt like possibility. The bus arrived in Manhattan at 5:30 a.m. Maya stepped off into the early morning quiet, her bag over her shoulder, her heart pounding with nervous anticipation. She had texted Alexander her arrival time, but she hadn't asked him to meet her. She needed a moment to collect herself first. She found a coffee shop near the bus station and ordered the strongest thing on the menu. As she waited for her drink, her phone buzzed. A text from Alexander. I know you said you needed space, but I'm outside, just in case. Maya's breath caught. She walked to the window and looked out. He was there, standing beside a black car, his hands in his pockets, his eyes scanning the street. He looked tired. He looked anxious. He looked like a man who had been waiting for something for a very long time. Maya watched him for a full minute before she walked outside. Alexander saw her immediately. His whole body straightened, hope and fear warring on his face. Maya, you didn't have to come. I know. He took a step toward her. But I wanted to. They stood there 2 feet apart, the morning traffic beginning to build around them. The trial is in 3 weeks, Maya said. I know. I'm going to testify. I know that too. And after that? Maya trailed off, not sure how to finish. Alexander took another step closer. After that, whatever you decide, whatever you need, I'll respect it. You keep saying that. Because I mean it. Maya looked at him, really looked at him, seeing the exhaustion in his eyes, and the tension in his shoulders, and the vulnerability he was trying so hard to hide. You look terrible, she said. Alexander laughed, a surprised, genuine sound. I haven't been sleeping well. Guilt. Worry. His eyes met hers. About you. About whether you were okay. About whether you would ever come back. I'm back. You're back for the trial? Yes. Maya paused. And maybe for other things too. Something shifted in Alexander's expression. Hope, fragile and bright. What other things? I don't know yet. Maya took a breath. But I'm willing to find out. At 8 a.m., Alexander took Maya to a small apartment he had arranged for her. It wasn't luxurious, but it was comfortable, clean, private. A place where she could think without pressure. You don't have to stay here, Alexander said. You can stay anywhere you want. I just thought you might need somewhere quiet. This is perfect. Maya set her bag down and turned to face him. Thank you. For what? For not pushing, for giving me space, for being patient even when I gave you no reason to hope. Alexander's jaw tightened. You gave me every reason to hope, Maya. You just didn't know it. What do you mean? You came back. His voice was rough with emotion. After everything I put you through, you came back. That's more than I ever expected. More than I deserved. Maya moved toward him, closing the distance between them. Alexander, can I ask you something? Anything. That night at the cemetery, when you watched me cry, what did you feel? Alexander closed his eyes, as if the memory was physically painful. I felt like my heart was being torn out of my chest. I wanted to run to you. I wanted to hold you. I wanted to tell you I was alive and that everything would be okay. But you didn't. No. I stayed in the shadows like a coward, telling myself it was for the greater good. He opened his eyes. I will regret that moment for the rest of my life. Why? Because you were alone. You were suffering, and I let you. His voice broke. Because I was too focused on my plan to see what it was costing you. Maya reached up and touched his face. I forgive you. Alexander went still. What? I forgive you. Maya's eyes were wet, but her voice was steady. I've spent 3 weeks trying to hold on to my anger, trying to convince myself that what you did was unforgivable. But I can't anymore. Maya, you made a mistake. A terrible, painful mistake, but you made it trying to protect something you loved. She cupped his face in both hands. And when you realized how much it had hurt me, you didn't make excuses. You didn't try to justify it. You apologized. You took responsibility. You let me go. I would have let you go forever if that's what you needed. I know. Maya smiled through her tears. That's how I knew you really loved me. At 10:30 a.m. they sat together in the small apartment talking. Not about the trial, not about Victoria or Brandon or the empire Alexander had reclaimed. They talked about real things, small things, the kind of things two people share when they're trying to build something new. Maya told him about Grace, about growing up poor in Georgia, about her mother's death and her father's abandonment, about the dreams she had given up and the hopes she had buried. Alexander told her about his own childhood, about losing his mother at 22, about Victoria's cold manipulation and Brandon's casual cruelty, about building an empire while feeling utterly alone inside it. I never told anyone these things, he admitted. Not my therapist, not my closest advisors, no one. Why are you telling me? Because you're the first person who ever made me feel safe enough to be honest. Alexander took her hand. You saw me when no one else did. You loved me when I didn't deserve it. The least I can do is show you who I really am. Even the ugly parts. Especially the ugly parts. Maya squeezed his hand. I want to know all of it. The good and the bad and everything in between. Even if some of it is hard to hear. Especially then. At 2 p.m., Maya received an unexpected visitor. Marcus Williams stood at her door, his large frame filling the entrance. Marcus. Maya stepped back in surprise. What are you doing here? I came to apologize. Marcus's voice was heavy with regret. That night when they dragged you out of the mansion, I should have stopped them. I should have done something. You couldn't have. Victoria would have fired you. That's no excuse. Marcus met her eyes. I've worked security for 30 years. I've seen a lot of injustice. But watching them destroy an innocent woman while I stood by and did nothing, that's the worst thing I've ever done. Maya reached out and touched his arm. You warned me, Marcus. That day at the funeral you told me to be careful. You tried to help. It wasn't enough. Maybe not. But it mattered. Maya smiled softly. And you gave me that USB drive, the one with the evidence. Marcus nodded. I've been collecting that evidence for years, waiting for the right moment to use it. His jaw tightened. I just never imagined the moment would come at your expense. The trial is in 3 weeks. Will you testify? Wild horses couldn't keep me away. Marcus's expression hardened. I've waited a long time to see Victoria Thornton answer for what she's done. I intend to be there when it happens. At 5:45 p.m., Alexander took Maya to dinner at a small restaurant in Brooklyn. It wasn't fancy. No private rooms or champagne or hovering waiters. Just good food and quiet conversation and the growing sense that something between them was shifting. Tell me something, Maya said over coffee. If I had never come back, if I had stayed in Georgia forever, what would you have done? Alexander considered the question carefully. I would have made sure you were taken care of, financially, professionally, whatever you needed. From a distance. Yes, from a distance. He met her eyes. But Maya, I never would have stopped loving you. I never would have stopped hoping. That's a lot of hope to invest in someone who might never return. It wasn't investment, it was faith. Alexander reached across the table and took her hand. Faith that the connection between us was real. Faith that someday, somehow, we would find our way back to each other. And if we hadn't, then I would have spent my life knowing that I had loved someone truly and deeply, even if I couldn't keep her. His voice softened. That's more than most people ever get. At 9 p.m., Alexander walked Maya back to her apartment. They stood at the door, the city humming around them, neither wanting to say goodnight. I should go in, Maya said. You should. Neither moved. Alexander. Yes. I don't want to rush this. I don't want to make promises I can't keep. I understand. But I also don't want to wait anymore. Maya stepped closer to him. I've spent my whole life waiting for things to get better, waiting for someone to see me, waiting for permission to want what I want. What do you want, Maya? She looked up at him, her heart pounding. I want to try. I want to see if what we feel can survive the daylight. I want to build something real with you, even if it's scary, even if it's hard. Even knowing what I did, even knowing I let you suffer. Even then. Maya took his face in her hands. Because love isn't about finding someone perfect. It's about finding someone worth forgiving. Alexander's eyes glistened. I don't deserve you. Maybe not, Maya smiled. But you have me anyway. She kissed him. It was soft at first, tentative. Two people who had been through too much, finally allowing themselves to hope. Then it deepened, years of longing pouring out in a single moment. When they finally pulled apart, they were both breathing hard. Good night, Alexander, Maya whispered. Good night, Maya. She went inside, closing the door behind her, her heart fuller than it had ever been. The trial began on a gray Tuesday morning 3 weeks later. The courtroom was packed. Reporters filled the gallery. Cameras waited outside. The fall of Victoria and Brandon Thornton had become the story of the year, and everyone wanted to watch. Maya sat in the witness waiting area, her hands clasped in her lap, trying to steady her breathing. Alexander sat beside her, his presence a warm anchor in the chaos. You don't have to do this, he said quietly. There's still time to change your mind. I know. Maya looked at him. But I need to do this. For me. For every person Victoria ever hurt. I'll be right there in the gallery. If it gets to be too much. I know. Maya squeezed his hand. Thank you. At 10 a.m., Maya was called to the stand. She walked through the courtroom with her head high, feeling the weight of hundreds of eyes upon her. Victoria sat at the defense table looking smaller than Maya remembered her face, a mask of controlled fury. Brandon sat beside her, pale and sweating. Maya took her seat in the witness box and raised her right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? I do. The prosecutor approached. Miss Thompson, can you describe your relationship with the defendants? Maya took a breath. I worked as a maid at the Thornton estate for 3 years. Mrs. Thornton was my employer. Mr. Brandon Thornton lived in the house. And how did they treat you? Maya looked directly at Victoria. Mrs. Thornton treated me like I was invisible. She spoke to me like I was beneath contempt. She criticized everything I did and took credit for any improvements in the household. And Mr. Brandon Thornton. Brandon was different. He noticed me, but not in a good way. Maya's voice hardened. He made comments, jokes at my expense. He enjoyed making me uncomfortable. Can you describe the events that led to your dismissal? Maya told the story, all of it. The gold pen planted in her room, the accusation, the humiliation, the guards who had dragged her into the rain. She spoke clearly and calmly, letting the facts speak for themselves. When she finished, the prosecutor asked one final question. Miss Thompson, do you believe Victoria and Brandon Thornton knowingly framed you for a crime you didn't commit? Maya looked at Victoria, holding her gaze. Yes. I believe they conspired to destroy my reputation and my life because they saw me as a threat. A threat to what? To their control. To their secrets. Maya's voice was steady. To the truth they didn't want anyone to know. The defense attorney tried to shake her testimony during cross-examination, but Maya held firm. She answered every question honestly, never wavering, never backing down. When she finally stepped down from the witness stand, she felt lighter than she had in months. At 4:30 p.m., the jury began deliberations. Maya and Alexander waited in a small conference room surrounded by lawyers and security personnel. The hours dragged by heavy with anticipation. At 7:15 p.m., word came that the jury had reached a verdict. The courtroom fell silent as the jury foreman stood. In the matter of the State of New York versus Victoria Thornton on the charge of conspiracy to commit murder, we find the defendant guilty. A gasp rippled through the gallery. On the charge of embezzlement, we find the defendant guilty. On the charge of fraud, we find the defendant guilty. Maya watched Victoria's face crumble with each word. The mask finally slipped away, revealing the terrified woman beneath. The foreman continued with Brandon's verdicts. Guilty on all counts. As the verdicts were read, Maya felt Alexander's hand slip into hers. "It's over," he whispered. "Yes," Maya replied. "It's finally over." 3 months later, Maya stood in the Thornton Foundation offices addressing a room full of staff members. She was no longer a maid. She was the new director of community outreach, overseeing programs that help domestic workers access legal aid, housing assistance, and job training. It was work that mattered, work that made a difference. "These programs aren't charity," Maya told her team. "They're justice. Every person who walks through our doors deserves to be treated with dignity, to be seen, to be valued." After the meeting, Alexander found her in her office. "Impressive speech," he said, leaning against the doorframe. "I learned from the best." Maya smiled. "How was the board meeting?" "Long, boring, full of people who think they're smarter than they are." Alexander crossed to her desk. "But the quarterly projections look good. The company is recovering." "Good." Alexander studied her face. "You seem happy." "I am happy." Maya stood and moved toward him. "I have work I love, a purpose, a future." She reached up to straighten his tie. "And I have you." "You have me," Alexander agreed, "for as long as you want me." Forever sounds about right. At 6 p.m. that evening, Maya returned to the cemetery one last time. She stood before the grave marked with Alexander's name, the headstone that had witnessed her greatest grief and her deepest confession. Alexander stood beside her, alive and real and warm. "I came here that night to say goodbye," Maya said quietly. "I thought I was mourning a dead man, but I was really mourning a part of myself, the part that believed I could never be loved." And now, Maya turned to face him. "Now I know better. I know that love isn't about perfection. It's about showing up. It's about being honest. It's about forgiving the people who hurt us and having the courage to try again." Alexander cupped her face in his hands. "I will spend the rest of my life trying to deserve you." "You already do." Maya smiled. "You just needed someone to show you." He kissed her then in front of the grave that had once held all her sorrows under a sky that was finally beginning to clear. 1 year later, Maya Thompson became Maya Thornton. The wedding was small, private. Just Grace and Marcus and a handful of people who had proven their loyalty through fire. As Maya walked down the aisle, she thought about the journey that had brought her here. The invisible maid who had learned to be seen. The broken woman who had learned to trust. The lonely heart who had found its home. Alexander waited for her at the altar, his eyes bright with tears he didn't bother to hide. "I love you," he said as she reached him. "I love you too," Maya replied. "I always have." They spoke their vows. They exchanged rings. They sealed their promises with a kiss that held the weight of everything they had survived. After the ceremony, Grace pulled Maya aside. Mama would be so proud of you, Grace said, tears streaming down her face. I know. Maya hugged her sister tight. I can feel her watching. That night, as Maya and Alexander danced their first dance as husband and wife, Maya thought about the girl she had once been. The invisible girl who had learned to disappear. The maid who had loved a billionaire from the shadows. That girl was gone now. In her place was a woman who knew her worth. A woman who had fought for her dignity and won. A woman who had learned that the truth, no matter how painful, always finds its way into the light. What are you thinking about? Alexander asked, pulling her closer. About how far we've come. Maya looked up at him. About how much we've both changed. Do you have any regrets? Maya thought about the rain, the grave, the tears, the betrayal, the forgiveness. No, she said finally. Not one. Because Maya Thompson had learned something in the darkness of that cemetery, something that would stay with her for the rest of her life. That love is not about finding someone who has never hurt you. It is about finding someone worth healing with. Someone who sees you when no one else does. Someone who loves you, not despite your scars, but because of them. She had found that person. Against all odds, through grief and betrayal and impossible hope, she had found him. And she would spend the rest of her life being grateful that she had been brave enough to let herself be found. The maid who cried at the billionaire's grave had become the woman who stood beside him, equal in every way that mattered. And that was not just an ending, it was a beginning.